This is truly critical in their job. And your procedures and practices emphasize and re-emphasize that. Sorry, I need to switch off to editing this, so also looking back and forth for so long. Is you have to create seriousness in your management structure, in your incentive structure, in how you communicate about it, and really letting people know this is important. An engineer comes in assuming their day job is only to do whatever they got told and what's on their list. That's not going to be good enough. And so it's absolutely critical. Related to that, obviously, is the question, I would love to, but where is the time? When? And so making space is critical. So if management doesn't start by saying it's important, I expect it, and everybody understands it's expected, but then you don't make any space for it, there's no time, how's it going to happen? As they say, if something is important enough to do, then it's important enough to do with important resources in important time, not spare resources in spare time. It's not going to happen otherwise. So creating a management structure and a policy structure and a culture that says this is important, this is your job, therefore I'm going to make the space and create incentives. If managers are measured by the amount of innovation they produce, then you can get to innovation. You can't start before that. You have to start by creating that basic incentive or ethos without which you don't get it. Otherwise it's just another buzzword. Second, diversity helps. Diversity is important. If a few managers and a few execs are going to sit down in a room and come up with an idea, it ain't going to happen. So the authors of course make a lot of points about diversity of ideas, new ideas, even involving outsiders is important. So thinking about the mix and makeup of your company so that you don't have an army of clones all think the same way, therefore the ideas that are going to come out are the same 5 ideas is important. Mix of experiences, mix of cultures, clashes of ideas are important. How much we can control that on a daily basis? Difficult, it's a longer play. But it has to be a conscious aspect of how you begin to think about it. So if you want to do ideation, don't do it in a closed room with the same 5 guys. Why are they any smarter? And then of course, you have to create certain other preconditions that allow the ideas to begin to flow. So connection and conversation, it doesn't just happen. Just because you have diversity and just because you announced it and just because there's an incentive plan. I did that. We set up bonusing plans. If people had an idea, took it to a prototype, we gave them extra dollars.
Just for prototype?
Sure.
No results?
Doesn't matter. We wanted to first get the stuff going. We want people to think about it. We did other stuff. We basically said, look, people come in and complain, I'm stuck in this job, I'd rather be doing that project. We said, okay, you work it with your manager. Okay? What we will do is, always there's more to do. Everybody has some extra job to do in any team. We said, if you have something that you really want to get developed or built in any team, you're welcome to put up, and I will put money behind it, to incent other people to come and work with you around the company on their time, to build something out, so they can try something different completely.
Did that work?
No. Only to a degree, because the managers on their side couldn't make enough time. Second is, there wasn't enough uptake on some of the engineers. Couple did. But did we work hard enough to get to the engineers saying, this is another way to build your own career. This is where you get to try all the other things. See, the issue is, was it their fault or was it my fault, or did I maintain it long enough? Did we push it through my whole management chain long enough? And I think looking back on it, some of those were just top-down me driving a few things, not necessarily every manager really taking it on board. Because if they took it on board, then they would do different things. Because then it becomes, why am I giving you my guy for his time? And then who the hell's got time anymore? It goes right back to how would you create some time. So we did incentive. So it's not enough to just put up bonuses. It's not enough just to say this is important. You have to create a context in which people can communicate and practice, which is where that little quote comes from. This is from a very famous golfer. When, the point was that serendipity doesn't just happen. You increase the opportunity for it to happen. As he says, the more I practice, the luckier I get. It's a very odd statement if you think about it. It's because I keep doing something, I create more opportunities so I can exploit it. You have to create that basis for more opportunities that can then be exploited. So this is just the front end. if you don't have some of these things happening, if people are not talking about it, if there's not enough connection cross silo, if people don't even know what's going on or what might be interesting in other parts, if people don't know why your customers buy your product, for example, they're just doing their job, tapping out the next bug fix. They don't know why that bug fix is. How are they going to create something? If every day the man is only on their back to get that damn thing out, how are they going to think that anything else is important? If the review rating is then based on how many of those things they got done in time, where is the rest of it? So a set of making sure that it is not only okay, but it is a critical element of your job. Your culture has to be set up that way, space has to be created, and then you have to create mechanisms for conversation. I'll let you read about what some mechanisms could be, what people have done before. I don't want to take away from the book either. Once some level of those preconditions, and the neat thing about this is these things some steps of these can run in parallel. These don't have to sort of be very sequential until you get to prerequisites all done and you don't go to the next stage. And you don't have to do all or nothing in the whole organization. You can start any place. That's what I found. You start with the groups that are most receptive already in terms of their prerequisite readiness. They'll jump all over. But the second question was, okay, you've set all these prerequisites, you've got all this diversity, you've got all these plans, you're doing all this conversation, people get together, have idea sessions or exchange information with each other. Do they even know how to think about what to innovate? Uncle, give me an idea. How can we make our business better? You get dead silence in the room. So what these guys talk about is you actually have to train people on how to even think about where innovation may arrive. So thinking about how to innovate or what to innovate requires training and an initial managed process. Now, I actually buy into this because the level of ideas we got, just asking people for ideas was tiny, because the scope of what people were thinking about was tiny. Teaching them to think about larger conversations is really critical. Could we do it very systematically? No, but wherever we managed to put a context for thought, it became interesting. So the book talks about 4 lenses of innovation. How do you think about innovating? Well, 1, challenge orthodoxies. The things you take for a given in your industry, in your business. Flip it over. Example of Southwest Airlines. All the airlines were hub and spoke. Everybody said that's the most efficient way to run. Yeah? Diversity of planes to match different route sectors. Classes of service, what have you. Southwest flipped all of that on its head. Why do I need hub and spoke? Why not go point to point and do more turns of inventory with shorter flights? What's wrong with that? Why do I need to have different classes of service? Why not one size fits all? Come in, sit down where you like. They fly only one plane. Only 737s, nothing else. They don't fly 747s for longer haul. They don't fly whatever else. They deliberately only stay. They only do 4 or 5 new cities every year, no more. And they've been doing that for 30 years. They don't do a lot of international flights. They're all short haul. They're all fairly short, flights all the way through. It is very carefully built around completely reversing the orthodoxies. Single class of service. Any flight crew can work any flight by definition. They're all certified by definition. So when you flip those orthodoxies, then why do I have to steal passengers away from you? Why don't I bring passengers? This is what Deccan also did. Why don't I bring those trained passengers onto planes for the first time? And Southwest has done that very successfully. And so in an industry where everybody loses money, the fastest way, they said, to take $1 billion and make it into $1 million. As I said, the best way to turn billionaires into millionaires, start an airline. In that industry, they have produced profits without fail for 30 years. Yeah? So challenging orthodoxy. So you look at your business, you look at what's taken for granted, and you start flipping the model. It could be do something different from the leader. It could be why is this a given? Why should hotels be charged nightly instead of hourly, especially around an airport? Because you fly in and out. Why do I need to charge you for the full day? Why not 4-hour slots? Depends. You can flip the business over completely. What is the notion of an airport hotel, for example, maybe a way for people to think about it?
No hotels do that.
Yeah, I know. So those are some of the orthodoxies, cover some of those examples. So that's one way. So when you look at putting your people in a room and start giving them a little context like that, suddenly the conversation is dramatically different and more tangible. And the youngest guy can contribute, no problem. Because their experience suddenly starts playing into common sense and just looking at the problem from a different prism. Harnessing discontinuities. Are there trends that are going on, that are coming together, that lead to new ideas? So they do a simple example that I'll leave out there to illustrate what they meant. They talked about the fact there are more single parents now, especially in the US. More people working longer hours, working from home and blending everything. Getting more online with each other. So what is the trend that's leading to? What are those 3 or 4 trends sort of pointing to? Is it discontinuity? People are starting to get more socially isolated. They marry later. They don't find their college sweetheart and get married. Marry many years later into their 30s. So if they're already isolated, working longer hours, where are they going to meet people? More dating sites seem obvious, no? Or social networks seem an obvious answer to such a set of trends coming together. It shouldn't be a surprise that these things have exploded on the scene. So that's another way to look at trends around your business and training people to think about these things and what may be the next thing that could make a difference becomes important. Leveraging competencies was an interesting one. It was not obvious to me at all when I first read it. This is about saying, do I think of my core competency as a product or a service? Or do I think of myself as a portfolio of capabilities? Very, very odd one. It took me a little while to sort of read it and reread it. But they talked about, for example, ESPN. Started as a sports channel. The first pure play 24/7 sports channel in the world. Yeah? But they never saw themselves as a sports channel. They saw themselves as a provider of sports information 24/7 globally. The moment you shift the perspective to that, it suddenly starts making sense why they run magazines around sports. They run radio networks around sports. They run 8 separate channels around sports. And they own events around sports and what have you. Whereas if they only took their perspective as a channel, they would be looking at more advertising or more sponsorships. They talked about Keen. Keen is a shoe company. Start from zero. 60 days later, they were competing with Nike and taking share. Because they looked at their core competence saying, we want to produce this new class of sportswear. So they manufactured in China on contract, did their own design, pulled pieces together from various places and hit the stores right. Certainly reasonably funded, right? Of course. Book examples of genuinely medium-sized and larger businesses. So the whole point was they didn't worry about, do I have a capability to manufacture the shoes? Do I go set up a plant? The point was, I want to hit the market quickly with this kind of capability so I can begin to take share of it. So they simply assembled the organization itself. They didn't hire a lot of people.
So what does leveraging competencies mean in this context?
So you look at, in this context, you think of the skill sets that you have in your company. The inventory of your capabilities. You think of your portfolio of skills that you have. You think of the portfolio of things that you do. You think of the portfolio of things you have advantages in, and you look at them in new ways and see if there are new businesses. I leave you to read this one. Like I said, I had to read this a couple of times to really start internalizing. But the idea is you can look at your business differently. The very act of thinking about your business differently changes it. Trying to think of examples off the top of my head. If you think about, if you remember SEAP, for some of us older guys, started Salesforce automation. And they did very well. That's how they started the company in '94, ran through, became public. But then they flip it over and say, well, it's not just about automating the sales force. What you really have is a customer relationship management problem. The moment you start thinking about a broader umbrella of which you say you have a core point solution, and that becomes the umbrella in which you multiply, you change into a completely different level of value provided. Because that is the problem that you're really solving eventually. It's how do you really manage your relationship with your customers efficiently on a global scale. So flipping your prism over tends to lead to a whole slew of things you could do because you discover that you already have the capabilities. there are other stories from good to great. These guys were making paper products. Kimberly Clark, I forget which one was which. But they ran, they started from saw and timber mills many years earlier, moved to manufacturing paper and paper products. And their rise from good to great, the cusp was the new CEO, insider man of the company for 20 years, promoted to CEO finally, chose to sell the paper mills. He said, our business is not the mills, our business is the paper products. So that was a case of competencies that existed and recognizing the needs were going to be very different. They gave away what was the core of what the business was built around. It's not very different than IBM selling the PC business. We always thought of IBM PC. IBM doesn't make PCs anymore. IBM is a services company. They replaced $60 billion of revenue in 10 years. Completely changed where the 60 billion came from. So that's a case again of recognizing different competencies, but the competencies that existed and shifting them over. Understanding articulated needs, the needs out there. People, you have to see what might be things that you're not covering. Again, I'll leave it to you to take a look at the book, but examples of either or, you can either have cost or you can have quality. Toyota started putting the two together, made an and. You can have both. There you go. That's what, that's how Toyota became big in the 80s. Pretty soon they were building luxury brands like the Lexus. IBM Life Sciences, unarticulated need. Lady within IBM, her mother apparently passed away. What happened was she had allergy to a particular medicine. Went into hospital a second time, was given the same medicine by the doctor even though the record had, the paper record in the hospital had been updated. Apparently it turns out, happens all the time. About 100,000 deaths can be traced back to allergies, other known symptoms that people simply didn't have the records for. She asked for within IBM and started Life Sciences Group, they started tracking patient records. It's $1 billion business in less than 8 years. They talk about the example, $1 billion in less than 6 years.